Carly, Representative Drenner, you did not want to present this, is that correct?
No, sir.
Okay.
Deferring to the chair.
Okay. Well, in that case, then, Representative Stover, I'm going to ask you to chair this part of the meeting.
Okay.
So come on up. Before you do that, I do need, we have a sign-up sheet. If you'll bring me the sign-up sheet so we can count decide. Is this all 465? Okay,
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Just fine.
Hmm?
That's for the next meeting.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we went 3 minutes apiece, that'd be supposedly. Before I turn this over, on this 465, we have a number of people signed up for it, so we're going to limit the testimony to 3 minutes. I think you could say it within that period of time, and there may be questions, but it's late in the day, and we have another bill after this one, and so with that, Reverend Stover, if you will preside and recognize me, present this bill.
The chair recognizes Chairman Parsons to present the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate it. We have a substitute to House Bill 465. The version we're working from is LC 441200S. This is some legislation that actually initiated with some work that Representative Drenner did last year, and we worked with her in this committee on. It's a consumer bill. It's a bill that relates to a public utility, the public utility being provision of water, drinking water, or whatever, water, I should say, including drinking water. And Representative Drenner worked hard on it, and she's going to want to speak, I believe, on the bill. And I need to recognize Blake Doss, our policy analyst. Blake has worked really hard on this past year. And in all honesty, I haven't worked that hard on it. I've been involved in it, and I think it's a good piece of legislation, but I'm not the driving force behind it. And both Representative Drenner and Blake, they have been much more involved in this than I am. But I do believe it's a good bill, and it has to do with, here again, it's a consumer bill. And with that, if you will look on, and I'll just go through it briefly, pages 1 through lines basically 15 through 38 are the findings that we're presenting from the General Assembly. And, you know, people have it is a public interest. It is in the public interest of the General Assembly that that people are provided with water and a customer bill of rights to ensure that customers receive water and sewer services on reasonable terms and at reasonable prices from community water systems. The intent of this chapter is to ensure that all customers of water and sewer systems have. And then we have our little bill of rights here, which are pretty reasonable, and I don't think anybody would have any problem with those. If you want to read through those, and they go through 38. Have the right to receive information about their community water services, plans, so on and so forth. Receive the benefits of new services, technological advancements. Enjoy the protection of reasonable and uniformly. And I think this is part of what we're really trying to get to. Enjoy the protection of reasonable and uniformly applied standards that protect customers. Customers are protected from unfair, deceptive, fraudulent, and unreasonable practices. Receive accurate and timely bills. Are protected from price increases resulting from inequitable price shifting, and have the right to a fair and efficient process for resolving disputes within community water systems. And to me, those are pretty reasonable findings, and maybe somebody has a problem with them. I wouldn't think so. Line 40 through 62 are definitions. pretty straightforward if you want to look at the definitions. And then we have the what the bill would call for. And we've worked, and in particular, Blake has worked on this really hard with different parties that have been involved and have an interest in this. And we've made a number of concessions on it. And some of the things were brought to us, we've looked at and said, okay, yeah, I can understand why that needs to be changed. And but I really think that what we have here that we're presenting are reasonable. And a community water system shall allow all customers to rescind without penalty any service agreement entered into with such community water system within 3 days of the customer entering into the agreement. Allow customers to terminate service agreements as provided for in such agreements in writing, in person, by telephone, or electronically by contacting the community water system. Not provide to customers any bills with amounts due based on estimates more than 3 times in any 12-month period, except in the event that the customer tampers with the meter. That issue was brought to us, and sometimes it's customers will actually, for whatever reason, tamper with things. Well, okay, that makes sense to us. Not bill any estimated amount exceeding the customer's average bill amount during the duration of service to the customer or the prior 12 months, whichever is greater. To accept cash payments for bills, issue bills for within 30 days of meter reading where applicable, or otherwise at least quarterly. Not impose any security deposit in excess of $200 for single-family residential customers. Not impose any late fee, fee for cancellation, or other punitive fee or penalty in excess of 15% of any past due balance. And then there's some others that you can read through. I don't need to read everything to you. Each community water system shall provide to its customers upon request and shall maintain a publicly accessible website or otherwise make publicly available the following information: the process by which rates are determined, the billing interval or intervals utilized by the community water system, the amount of all fees, including fees for delinquent payments, cancellation of service, and reconnecting to the system charged by the community water system in addition to service rates. And I think that the rest of that's pretty straightforward down through 121. 123, a community water system becomes aware by any means of an error in billing for services on the part of such system shall correct the error within 30 days of becoming aware of such error or mistake. Upon a failure of a community water system to connect or correct an error, and upon the filing of an action by a customer, the community water system shall have the burden of proving by preponderance of the evidence that the community system did not act with gross negligence. Now going down to, and you can read down through 145, on page 5, 147, this has to do with the judicial part of it. Except as otherwise provided in subsection C of this section, a customer shall be authorized to bring an action for a declaratory judgment, civil damages, or punitive damages in Superior Court of the county in which any portion of the community water system is located in order for such court to determine whether the community water system has failed to comply with any of the requirements provided for in this chapter other than the ones in Code Section 4610.2. Such action shall be brought within the calendar year immediately following the calendar year in which the alleged failure to comply occurs. And this explains how the judicial part of it would work through the next paragraph ending on 176. I should mention too, I don't know where it's at, but we had agreed to have this act become effective not in 2019, but effective July the 1st, 2020, to provide time for the services to make any kind of changes or whatever to prepare for this. to me, it's a consumer bill. Now, we've heard, it's one of those things that, here again, been working on for a long time, but we haven't tried to get any publicity about it or anything like that. I haven't written any editorials for local newspapers or anything like that. It's one of those things that I think that the people have heard about it so far and maybe had some complaints about it or had problems with it are not the people in general who would be served and have an interest in having good water and being able to have a way to make sure that the service is provided to them and that they are treated in a fair manner. It's the people out there. I know we all are, but I mean, a lot of people in here, as we know, represent special interests. It's the people out there who do not represent special interests, who need drinking water and clean water. I think that the more this is publicized, more that people know about it, the more likely there is to be general support for it. And with that, I would be glad to answer any questions or try to, but I would rather go on and let Representative Drenner make her presentation, and then we have some people signed up.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have any questions from the committee right now? All right. I recognize Representative Drenner to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, as Chairman Parsons said, this has been an effort that has been underway for the last 3 years to address some significant billing issue concerns. And I'd like to thank Blake and Chairman Parsons for working with all the entities that are here today and all the entities that are not here today to try to get a product, a piece of legislation so that consumers within Georgia have a vehicle for recourse if, in fact, there has been an issue with one of their bills. So I, like Chairman Parsons, am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, let's go ahead and call on for 3 minutes.
Okay. It doesn't appear we have any questions. So, Mike Thomas.
For the opportunity to speak. My name is Mike Thomas. I represent the Georgia Association of Water Professionals. We represent most of the public utility organizations in the state, as well as over 4,000 individuals who work in that industry in the state of Georgia. We do appreciate the efforts you've made to include us in the discussions on the bill and the changes that have already been made, and perhaps there's even a newer substitute we haven't seen, and that may address some of the concerns that we still do have with the bill. Unlike electric and gas utilities, of which there may be a dozen or so within the state, there are hundreds of public utilities in the state of Georgia, and they range in size from 20 or 30 customers up to hundreds of thousands of customers. So it's quite a diverse industry to try to regulate. We're concerned that if the bill is too prescriptive, if it's more like a one-size-fits-all approach, may be very difficult for some of these utilities who don't have those technological capabilities to implement all the requirements. It will have a significant cost for some utilities, as they may have to upgrade their billing software and other processes and add staff to address the timeliness of some of the requirements. We believe the bill should only apply to those single-family residential customers. Some of the provisions in the bill are very restrictive if we try to apply them to larger customers like apartment complexes or commercial operations. And to be brief, I will just address a few specific issues. One of those is limiting security deposits to $200. Again, if you're dealing with an apartment complex or a large commercial establishment, that would only cover a fraction of 1 month's bill, would not allow us to seek the funds that we need to recover if they don't pay. It's my understanding the PSC allows electric utilities to charge 2.5 times the expected average bill. And so a metric like that would be more appropriate than a set dollar amount. A set dollar amount is eventually going to be overcome by inflation and other issues. The language regarding late fees and other associated administrative fees is a little too specific in the timing and the amounts. Again, there are hundreds of utilities, all with their own specific business processes and practices in place. To address that and trying to make them all fit one model would be difficult. Technology is rapidly changing in our world today. Most people don't deal with letters in the mail as a way of correspondence. So again, a concern is requiring a written notice of disconnect. We've got to issue a letter through the Postal Service, hope they get it to the customer on time. If the customer happens to be out of town for a period of time, they don't see that mail, they don't get the notice. We would prefer that to be electronic. Most of our customers prefer us to communicate via email, text, or phone calls, and that's how, as a former utility director, we used to address those issues is by phone calls. So as a former utility director and a representative of GAWP, we appreciate the opportunity to work with you and think by making a few changes we can get this thing in shape that we could live with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Chair recognizes Clint Mueller. Clint, if you would. Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Clint Mueller. I'm the Legislative Director for the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. We represent the 159 counties in the state of Georgia. Obviously, we have a number of counties that do provide water service. We do recognize the importance of protecting the customers, and we have no argument, and we applaud the author of the bill for wanting to put measures in place to protect customers. However, our concern is really more about where's the proper place to put these policies in place. We believe that that's why we have local county and city officials that are elected. They were elected to make these policies locally based on what their constituents want. Like other utilities that have regulation where somebody is elected that oversees that regulation, we do have elected officials overseeing the local regulation of this utility. And we believe that that's the proper place for these policies to be debated, discussed, and implemented. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all. We think that every county is sort of unique. Obviously, cities are unique too. They should be able to explore what works in their community. If we were to implement several of these changes statewide, it would create a situation where most of the counties would have to go completely overhaul their local policies. It would cost money to change out their billing systems, things of that nature. Again, we have not heard of significant issues across the state in this regard. I am aware of one area of the state where this seems to have been a problem. However, I think this is a local service, and there's local elected officials that oversee these local services, and we should allow them to do their job. If people are having problems with their services, they need to report that to their local county or city and address it through their local officials. I'm not going to get into the details of the bill. We've received a number of comments back from individual counties that it gets really specific. And again, I know a lot of the provisions in this bill are very specific. When you look at a specific amount for deposits, a specific percentage for cancellation fees, I mean, it gets very, very detailed here. And we don't have time to go into all those comments. I just would appreciate the committee considering that, again, the proper place for vetting this type of policy is at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mueller. Chair recognizes at this time Gil Shearhouse. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Committee members, I appreciate the time to come before you and speak. Thank you for allowing us to provide feedback on this bill. Again, my name is Gil Shearhouse. I'm the Executive Director of the Water and Sewer Authority in Douglas County. We provide water, sewer, and stormwater services to Douglasville and Douglas County. We have about 140,000 residents that we provide those services for. I'll keep my points general in the interest of time and just hit a few high points, but I could articulate concerns or issues with potentially with many of the details. First, as was stated already, the aspirational items, those first that first group of line items is a true Bill of Rights, and I don't think anybody would argue that those are good measures to have for customer protection. But it's in the prescriptive requirements where the concerns really begin to be potentially problematic. Secondly, the rights and responsibilities are reciprocal, so all customers should pay their fair share. If we shift responsibility from one class of customers to another, that could be an unequitable shift of fees, exactly what I think the bill's intention is to prohibit. As was mentioned also, a statewide solution is not the way to address a local problem. I think fixing one bad apple or a small group of bad apples at the expense of punishing the rest of the providers and their customers could be problematic for especially customers of those organizations who are doing things correctly. Again, already mentioned, one size does not fit all. We believe each provider's services and practices should be tailored to the needs of the community they serve. I like to say nobody knows Douglas County's needs for water and sewer service better than we do. And we can tailor our programs, procedures, policies for our local community. There's also the law of unintended consequences. There are a lot of prescriptive measures in this bill. Just in talking to some of my counterparts around the state the other day, it came to light very quickly that how I read certain provisions and how they read certain provisions differed, and we're all looking at it through the same lens. So there could be potential items out there that we don't even know what the impact is. Certainly a lot of potential impact being unknown. Also, that could create additional loopholes. All of us have customers who like to play games with our policies and try to game the system. Some of these provisions could create additional loopholes that would allow customers to further game the system, and that's really where this unequitable shift of fees could occur. Those who don't pay, it's a zero-sum game for a water utility. Those rates will go up as bad debt expense goes up, rates will be driven up, and those customers who are the good paying customers will be forced to pay the burden for those who do not. Again, I could illustrate several examples with particulars there, but I understand we're on a time crunch, so I will stop there with my comments and appreciate, again, the time to provide feedback to this committee.
Great, thank you very much. Next, Chair recognizes Keisha Powell, City of Atlanta.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Keisha Powell. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Watershed Management for the City of Atlanta. And we do not differ in our opinion that the customer should come first. DWM is a water and wastewater utility with 160,000 service connections, but we view our service as being to 1.2 million customers in this region. We serve both wholesale and retail customers. The basis from which we operate as a public utility is captured in our core values of teamwork, accountability, integrity, employee commitment, and customer centricity. We have made service delivery the top of our list of strategic priorities in our new strategic plan, which has led to an increase in on-time performance relative to our service level agreements, a reduction in customer call volume, and a decrease in estimated bills below the national benchmark of 3%. As a public utility, our purpose, our mission is to provide these essential services for drinking water and wastewater for the protection of public health and safety without profit. Where we have billing disputes with our customers, we have an established process for our customers to file an appeal, which is outside of our department. It's to a body established and impaneled by the City Council, and this process is codified in our code, as are their rights for adjustments and credits. I just wanted to share with you a few concerns on the language in HB 465 for your consideration. The use of the term competitive prices, I think, as folks have said, there are a number of utilities in the state of Georgia, varying sizes, and we all have different things that we're dealing with. We cover different service areas, have differing CIP needs, There's no profit margin factored into our rates, and utilities should be recovering the cost of the services that they're delivering. That may not necessarily be competitive with surrounding jurisdictions. Line 71 to 76 talks about estimated reads. We actually managed to a standard of not seeing more than 2 consecutive estimated reads. But sometimes estimated reads are outside of the utility's control. It's actually the customer's responsibility to make sure that meters are available to be read. And in some cases, we have some customers that have intentionally blocked our ability to read meters. And I've seen that. This is now my 3rd utility. I've seen that in all 3. So I would just say consider that may be, the language there may be a concern. Also, customers' averages change, their seasonality to consumption. And sometimes, and when we do have to estimate a bill, we typically estimate in favor of the customer, and their bill is trued up once we're able to get an actual read. Section 46-10-6, lines 122 to 128, where it talks about the burden of proof. We are a public utility that's responsible for the public infrastructure. That means that our responsibility ends at the metering infrastructure. Oftentimes, when customers have an issue that they consider an error on our part, it could be due to an issue on private property, and we've seen this quite a lot. We cannot prove, because we're not going on private property, what the issue may be, but I would just ask that there be consideration that it could be something outside of our control beyond the meter. Lines 129 through 134, the language still doesn't seem to provide the clarification that something should be paid for the services that are being rendered. Already in the City of Atlanta's code, we have language that speaks to the customer having to pay the average amount for the period in dispute. And lastly, lines 142 to 145, if not required to require documentation in writing from the customer on whether or not they want a credit or a refund, we would not know whether a customer wants a credit or a refund. We would not be able to document meeting the service level associated with issuing that credit or refund. And we also need to make sure that we can adequately track refunds and who they are being dispersed to from a checks and balance perspective for the utility. Again, making sure that we're accountable and that we act with integrity. I thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. Next, Chair recognizes Dan.
I'm going to wait, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Chair recognizes Michael McPherson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Michael McPherson with the Georgia Municipal Association. I'd like to echo, the things that were said before in praise of Chairman Parsons and those involved in crafting the intent behind the bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us to work with your staff. They were great in meeting us and coming toward something that was a little bit more workable. That wasn't quite as onerous on the systems in play, but at the same time, the concerns are still there in terms of impact on the customer at the end of the day because of the different sizes of systems and their ability to navigate these mandates that are issued in the bill. So with that, we respectfully oppose the bill, but we appreciate your willingness to reach out to us, and we are here to keep that conversation going.
All right, so next I'll entertain any questions from the committee. Representative Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So initially, I was looking at this bill in a very favorable light because it's a consumer bill. We should be in the business for protecting our constituents. But after some significant amount of research and dialogue with others, I'm not sure if House Bill 465 meets my threshold for some specific reasons. And let me be very clear. First, we have to ask the question, who's the customer? If the customer is Miss Jones, that's 78 years of age, a widow, will she look at this bill as favorable? Or will Miss Jones prefer just to have some fresh, clean water? The other question is, who's the customer? What if this is the hospital or a college? We've seen where colleges may have a bill of $300,000, but a constituent in Georgia may pick up the AJC and see that a college have a bill of $300,000 and they still continue to get service. But Miss Jones, that's at the age of 78, her services were cut off. Will House Bill 465 protect Miss Jones? I believe that when you start talking about a consumer bill, there is a level of accountability and responsibility on both sides of the discussion. Those who are providing the services and those who are receiving the services. But when I look at security deposit limits to just $200, as it was already mentioned on line number 79, and I won't reiterate the points that were already made, but you may have some bad apples out there where their security deposit needs to be a little bit more than $200 for obvious reasons. Then there's a timing to implement such a change. When you look at 159 counties and 538 cities, I just haven't heard an outcry from municipalities. At least I haven't received the email. But going back to Ms. Jones, she prefers for us, when she reads the title Georgia Water Customer Bill of Rights Act, will there be something in there that protects her? See, because Ms. Jones may live in rural Georgia, where she and their services out there may not have a smart meter, unlike the urban areas. So now the staffing is going to have to be increased. So who pays for that staffing increase in rural Georgia? So when I look at House Bill 465, although we may start off with a consumer bill that protects constituents and customers, I ask the question, who's the customer? Who is this really protecting? Because I know if my bill went for a long period of time, it'll be cut off. But we don't see the same thing or the same rules apply for others. And so I do appreciate the amount of work that went into this bill. But as it stands right now, I don't think it's a level of addressing the question, because when you look at line 10, under the code in which this bill will address, it is public utilities and public transportation. So what will be the next bill? How will the providers of electricity, that's right, line 10 and 11, that's what it says. Trust me, I'm a doctoral student, I can read. Public utilities and public transportation. So when you look at this code, yes, sir. So what will be the next bill? Because other utilities going to ask the same thing. So we're talking about water today, but we're talking about utilities and public transportation. And so I just need to hear more, and I would love to hear from GMA or I just heard from GMA, but ACCG and with their perspective, I just don't hear outcry when it comes to this as it relates to the water customer bill. but they do. But our citizens are asking to make sure that they have clean water to drink.
Thank you, Representative Jackson.
If I may respond. Well, first of all, Representative Jackson, what you're referring to in line 10, that is Title 46, the official code of Georgia relating to public utilities and transportation. That's what's being amended. It doesn't mean we're doing anything with transportation. Believe me, this has nothing to do with transportation. As far as you did say.
I said what will be next.
Well, it could be anything. If somebody wants to amend that
Yeah.
that section, then it could. That's where it would be amended. That doesn't mean this is. You could put in a bill tomorrow that would amend that code section, but that doesn't mean this has anything to do with the customer. The customer is or are the little old ladies you're talking about. They're anybody out there. They're you. They're me. It's a consumer bill. That's what it's really about. I don't know. Has nothing to do with rates. We're not setting any rates. I would try to answer your questions, but some of them are just kind of, I don't, so you talked about transportation, you talked about so many things there. I don't know. I did want to bring to your attention, there is, the Department of Watershed Management has issued a boil water advisory today for an area down around Fairburn Road. I mean, first of all, I want to say that you know, I don't believe that, you know, I believe that most of these around the state are doing a good job. I'm not saying that, you know, we have bad actors all around the state. This is really not a very prescriptive bill. I mean, if you look at it, we're not asking very much. We're asking for some standardization and, I can't, looking through this myself, I mean, if I'm looking at it, and here again, I'm carrying the bill that a lot of other people have worked hard on, but as a legislator, if I'm looking at this bill myself, I don't see the issues that some have brought forward. I'm trying to think of some of the things were said. I mean, for the most part, everybody's worked in good faith on this and just trying to address some issues. And by the way, as far here again, the effective date is not until 2020. I mean, we're giving time. Some of the things this would cost us. If you look through this bill, there's really nothing that should cost anybody any amount of money to amount to anything, as I see it. What I would like to do is go ahead and I want to know what and I appreciate you, Representative Jackson. I appreciate you. Your questions, but I did want to point those things out to what you had said. It's up to the committee. It's up to the committee members that are here. What I would like to do would be to go ahead and move with this and pass it. And there's another big hurdle after it leaves here. So, but we have to start somewhere. There has to be something. If we leave here without doing anything at all, I think for one thing. And we have great people here. We have great people here that testified. But like I said to begin with, it is the consumers out there who don't even know about this, literally, don't even know about this legislation. And I got a feeling if we had consumers all over the state right now listening to this, I got a feeling that they'd be saying, please pass this bill. Please go ahead and do something to have some standardization to protect us, to make sure that this very vital source that our life depends on, that the state is looking after us and trying to do something to help us. And it's really not prescriptive, and we're giving a whole year based on the effective date for people to get ready for this. So with that, Chairman, you go ahead.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dickey.
This lady here wants to say. Yeah, let this lady speak.
Okay. Need to grab one of the other mics here.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a statement, or I don't want to prolong. I got here late, and I apologize. Had to present a bill, but I just represent a couple of districts. I know Macon Water Authority, and also Fort Valley Utility Commission that's in my district, are elected water utilities, and they have an elected board. The local citizens elect those, and they do a real fine job of managing their customers and their rates and their billing. And I just would really have issues with us on the state level trying to mandate down issues to a local level, especially when they're elected, such as that. And so I just really see a lot of issues going forward from that perspective from my district there. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ma'am, if you will state your name.
Yes, I'm Star McKenzie. I'm a resident of DeKalb County. I started a group called Unbelievable DeKalb Water Bills back in 2016. And I think that I'm a good representation of an area where it's not being managed properly at the local level, and we've had difficulty getting any progress. So I think we're a good example of why maybe the state needs to at least have a conversation about how to help at the county level. So the group that I started is 3,600 members strong, and we still are getting reports every day of bad bills. And this is the Mrs. Jones that you spoke of. So an 80-year-old woman with a bill that she cannot afford to pay. She doesn't understand even how it was calculated. So I've been fighting this fight for a solid 3 years. And really, I cannot tell you that we have made a lot of progress. I was appointed to a Citizens Water Billing Advisory Board, and I cannot tell you clearly what their strategy is at this point for fixing the billing problems. And I'm on a board that has direct communication with them monthly. For years, we've been waiting for them basically to provide some workable solutions to fix the billing problems, but, they're persisting. So I guess for me, I wonder, what does a resident do at that point when the county officials are not enforcing standard operating procedures? So with that in mind, I have requested standard operating procedures over and over and over again from the billing department. I've not seen any. To me, if there are no processes in place, they can't be enforced, and there's no accountability. Right now, as far as I see it, we are years away from completely fixing our billing issues in the county. And I think that residents really need to have some protections in place until those fixes actually happen. We still have a meter replacement program that's barely off the ground. We learned at the last advisory board meeting that the software implementation, they still don't even know what fields are going to convert from one database to another. So I think we've still got a ways, before things are actually fixed. So to me, I pose the question of what can we do to ensure that residents aren't just getting billed crazy amounts without any explanation of where the charges are coming from until this is actually fixed.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. Chair recognizes the next lady. Just state your name for me, if you will, please.
My name is Molly Prophet Sheets. I'm also a resident of DeKalb County. And I just wanted to put a face to this issue as an example consumer. In July 2017, we had 3 bills, and we're on a bi-monthly plan, for totaling $4,000 for 200,000 gallons of water that was not from a leak and that we did not use. We reached a resolution last month, so that is over 550 days that my husband and I came home every day to discuss our $4,000 water bill that we were fighting. The resolution determined that we had a defective iPearl meter, pre-2014 iPearl meter. This is an infrastructure problem. I wanted to put a face to this because I'm privileged. I'm in my 30s, I don't have children, I own my own business, and I could be here today. But most people in our county cannot be here, and they can't speak for us. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Jackson, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate both consumers, but your example is the perfect example based on what I was trying to express, Chair. When you look at 159 counties and 538 cities, as Chairman said earlier, we have individuals at every level of government. If we start using a hammer versus a mallet for every issue, and I'm using the utilities and then transportation as an example, because when I look at my cable bill or my telephone bill, I see all these fees and I want to call someone. So I end up calling that company first. If we start doing this for every utility company, it would be hard to standardize because not all city or county is created equal. There are different dynamics, and I use smart meters as a former GE employee. Those with a smart meter, it's real easy for them to drive right by your vehicle, take the meter information. They were able to reduce their staffing, and they got a digital system. In some of our rural Georgia areas, they're not caught up yet. And so when you start talking about implementing a change or standardizing across a state like this, there may be DeKalb County that we just need to address, or make some phone calls to the county commissioners and the CEO over there. But to try to do that for the entire state, I just think that it may not be the best piece of legislation to really address when you start talking about Bill of Rights. When I think about Bill of Rights and consumer bills, this is, Chair, what I was trying to go after. Today we're talking about water. Next, it will be, we can talk about electricity. So now we get Georgia Power and EMC. Then we start talking about all these other hosts of, and so we have individuals that we need to hold accountable and responsible to make sure that they're doing exactly what they need to deliver to the constituents, to the consumers.
Let me respond. Okay, Representative Jackson, I understand your concern. It is a utility. That utilities traditionally are regulated. There's been no regulation with this. We thought, when this whole process, we thought about maybe the direction we should go is put this all under the PSC. Maybe that would be a way to go. That would be more money we would have to appropriate, more people the PSC would have to do. Utilities are traditionally regulated. That's why you do have Georgia Power is regulated. That's why we regulate certain utilities. These people basically have done a good job, and we're not asking them to do anything. In fact, that's my question has been a lot of times when some of these people have come. If you're doing a good job that I think that you're doing, why would you even have a problem with these things right here? Because we're asking you to do basically the same thing that you're doing now and doing a good job. This is not over prescriptive, Representative Jackson. It really is, and it is a utility. That's what this whole code section is about. That's why it says utilities and transportation. It's a section that deals with those things, and this is just a step that wouldn't even go into effect for another year. I appreciate your concerns. I really do. It is about it most certainly. That's about what we do in this committee. That's what it's about, is the little old lady, the telephone, when she lives up at the end of the hollow, top of the hill, making sure that she has service, making sure that people have natural gas service, making sure they have electrical power. That's what utilities is about. That's why they're even called utilities. I mean, these are things that people need, and it's a duty of the legislative body to do whatever it feels like it has to do to make sure that those utilities are provided. I mean, that's what it's really all about. And we're not setting any rates, not doing anything outlandish in this bill whatsoever. Now, having said that, okay, go ahead and take that. I'm not chairing this right now, but we probably need to try to wrap it up before
We will.
We have another bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair recognizes Representative Carson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'd like Clint from ACCG or anybody else from ACCG to maybe answer this question. I know we were moving quickly along and time is short, but I'd like to understand what county water systems and possibly city water systems are going to need to do going forward to meet this July 1st, 2020 implementation in regard to billing systems. Clint, I think you mentioned something about this is going to have to change a lot of systems, and I'm wondering how onerous are these changes going to be on county water systems and city water systems. Could you go into a little bit more detail on that? Is that okay with the chairman?
That's fine. If you can step up to the witness mic there. The one right behind you. Sorry.
Do you understand the question I'm asking?
Yes. then there's the Georgia Water Professionals Association. They're here. They testified earlier. They may be better one to answer that since it's their systems in place. But what I understand from them is obviously their billing systems are all set up differently. They use different software systems, different companies that do this. So any procedural changes that come down from the state that they have to then change their local policies, that's going to affect their billing systems. Because if you look in the bill, for instance, over there on line 79, you've got a specific deposit amount, $200 or less. The next line or 2 lines down on line 82, 15% of any balance due until 20 days. And then again, specific 20 days after such balance is due. All those are procedural changes, and they'll have to make those changes. And a lot of times it's going to have to go into their software systems to make those changes, and that's going to have some cost, obviously,
In
on
regard
there
to
to do that.
I'm sorry, in regard to billing parameters and so forth, deposits?
Yeah,
other
this has
things?
to do with billing. This also has to do with situations where services is cut off, when they can cut off, get deposits, when they give deposits back. It gets very into the specifics about all these procedural things in regards to billing for this service.
Okay, thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't know what posture, again, I was at another committee meeting, came over, I've read this quickly. If I can just briefly offer 2 things is, I believe I understand exactly what Chairman Parsons is trying to do here. People live by definition in a monopoly in the water and sewer system. They don't have another customer. They don't have another place they can go. I recently am familiar with a situation whereby somebody called to get some work done, and they told them it was a week from next Christmas before they could get out there to get some things done. So I mean we understand that. That said, to what Mr. Mueller said, if their billing systems aren't configurable, that they aren't data driven, that they can change their percentage fees or their days past due, then they bought the wrong software. It's 2019. Those things should be able to be changed in the time we've talked about it, much less configurable. My question, I guess, is, to Chairman Parsons, since this is out a year in 2020, is would you be inclined, so that we don't touch the smaller systems that may have to be bothered, to work on your definition of the community water system to maybe include the larger systems, so we could work with them between now and then? So you could work with them between now and then to refine it, and because we have it now at least 25 customers. I mean, I could see where that could put some rural systems in a bind. Would that be something that Chairman Parsons might look at, while knowing that it's a full year out there, and you would bring people to the table? It might set some folks' mind at ease, because we'll continue to work on it. I throw that out there because I know the gentleman's heart's in the right place, and I know that something needs to be done, but I suspect it's those smaller systems that are really worried about how they would change their things. So that might remove a roadblock.
Well, that's a good question. We have been working. I mean, it's this is not just something we come up with in the last few weeks. This is something that's been worked on for over the last year, and that's correct. And we've had numerous meetings, and I don't know of anybody that I don't know that there hadn't been anybody that, I mean, I think everybody's had a chance to have input into this over the time. And we have had information that has told us that the smaller systems do have problems. They do need to be included in this. And one reason we just, we agreed to go ahead and put the effective date out is that, to give everybody a chance. I think you made the point yourself that some of these things that have been raised, and you know what, I will say this too. If I were one of these systems, or if I were ACCG, or if I were GMA, I mean, obviously, what is their job? You don't want something like this, but you don't want anything to pass that gives that demands one thing of you. I mean, you really don't. I mean, who does? Why would you agree with the bill to ask you to do any one thing? And especially the representatives who represent the cities, represent the counties, represent these entities, of course, you know, I mean, that's the natural answer. Just like some people will vote no on bills on the floor because that's always the easiest thing to defend. You know, that's the easiest thing to defend is a no vote. Well, I didn't have enough information, or the presenter didn't answer a question that I had, and that doesn't mean that no votes. I mean, sometimes no votes is exactly the right vote. But what I'm saying is, when something like this, yes, if I were one of those people, I would come to and I would be fighting it, and I'd be, you know, every little detail, any little thing that you could put out there. That doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the bill. Not asking very much of them at all. We've been working with them. What I would like to do is, and as you know, like I said before, there's still a big challenge between for any legislation that hasn't gotten out of rules. There's still a big hurdle there. Now, I would like for it to pass out of this committee today is what I would like. But I think also, you know, this is my, I think, 11th year chairing this committee. I've been on this committee. This is my 25th year on this committee. And I think a lot of the committee process, I think a lot of the people that are on the committee, and I really do. I mean, I think a lot of you. And I appreciate you even being here now when, you know, a lot of people have left for the day. And I think enough of you, I don't want to put anybody in a position to where you have to cast a vote that's going to hurt anybody back in, because we're not all from Metro Atlanta. I don't want to put anybody in a position that's going to hurt them with their local people back home. I really don't. I don't like to be put in positions sometimes on votes where I thought, well, you know, it'd be better if we just didn't have to have that vote today. There's no particular reason for it. I think there is a particular reason for this, and I think it's good. I'd like to have a vote on it, and I don't hold it against anybody. I mean, if you have to vote against it, but I hope that the only thing I would say is I would hope you vote against it because you see an issue with the bill that you think it shouldn't proceed. And I would also, if you think it's going to put you in, and I'm talking to members now, if you think it's going to put you in a position where you have a problem, you know, explaining to, and it wouldn't be your constituents, it wouldn't be the users. Here again, I think the users are going to be, you know, the consumers are going to be very happy. There's no reason a consumer wouldn't be happy with this bill. And then you know, so I mean, I don't hold it against you. I really don't on any of those reasons. If you vote against it, I'd like to go ahead and have a vote, and maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe we have enough votes to pass it. May not be enough votes. I know we have a couple anyway. Pretty sure of that. And then you know, what I plan to do, and I'm not the driving force behind this, but I think it's a very good thing, and I think that some of you special interests that have spoken against it, I think what you will find over the next year, if this does not pass, I think that you're going to find over the next year that you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of consumers in your areas that you represent coming and saying, I'm not talking about the members here, I'm talking about these people who have spoken for special interests. They're going to have a lot of people coming and say, why did you work against this bill? Why did you work against me? Why did you work against my family? Why did you do that? Why did you want that bill to pass? Why didn't you want that bill to pass? Why did you work against it? Why did you go to a committee? Why did you go in there and try to talk other, you know, a committee into voting against that bill that's good for us as consumers who use water, who live by that water? That's what they're going to be asking you. But that's just something that's going to be on you. It's not going to be on us that brought this bill forward. I'm not talking about the members here again. I understand and I respect you guys, every one of you, and I respect how you have to vote. So, but I would like to go ahead and have a vote on it, and that's up to the committee to even make a motion. But,
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you bringing this bill. This time, we will entertain any motions.
Do pass on House Bill 465 LC 41200S.
Do I have a second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
All opposed? No. We're going to do a hand count then. All right, so everyone for the bill, raise your hand. And everyone against? All right, bill fails 7-5.
like to make a motion to reconsider.
We have a motion to reconsider,
I'd like to make a motion to table the bill.
and we have a motion to table the bill. Yes, I am. Okay. All in favor of motion, all in favor of the motion to table the bill, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the bill is tabled.
All right, thank you, Chairman. I thought there'd be a lot of people moving after, or leaving after that one, so.
That's a good bill.
We're not finished, by the way. I think a lot of these people leaving because of the water thing. We're not finished. We also have, what's the bill number? Well, let's see. We're not going to take up House Bill 480. If somebody will present for Representative Williams, House Bill 541, anybody here could present for it. It's pretty simple bill. Somebody want to present for it?
I'm not on the bill, Mr. Chairman, but I was contacted
Okay.
by folks. I'll be brief here, Mr. Chairman, but I believe what he's after here is if somebody is in jeopardy and there's an emergent situation, that this bill is requiring wireless providers to work with the authorities involved, specifically a law enforcement agency or public safety instrument shall not request the information on this code unless they are responding to an emergency situation. But if they are, the wireless companies would cooperate with them to help locate the
Right.
individual involved. This is life safety issue, I believe. That
It is
Representative
I
Williams has
think it is a
brought
life
before us.
safety issue. Did somebody sign up to speak on this? Who? Oh, yes. If you come forward and state your name and tell us who you represent.
I am not representing Electronic Frontiers. They've had several people here all day at different committee hearings, and they ran out of people to come and asked me to state a couple of things to the committee. That the bill was incomplete in a couple of ways. The bill is permissive for the telephone companies to develop their protocols, but it doesn't require any standardization, nor does it say how long they have to do it. And also, there's no provision for someone who might want to abuse the system that's built into the bill.
All right, well, I appreciate your testimony. I would say this to the committee: if it doesn't pass today, there's no likelihood it will pass this session. So, if most likely, and I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I think you should take in consideration probably passing this with the language that it has currently, unless here again, it's up to the committee. Chairman Martin, did you have a question or comment? No. Okay, your light was on.
It was over from the presentation of the bill.
Okay. All right. What's the? I don't see any questions, but thank you. Anybody else want to testify on it? I think that's it. What's the? Oh, okay. We didn't see you. Okay. If you will say who you are and who you
Yes, sir.
represent.
My name is George Hartwig. I'm the elected district attorney in the House and Judicial Circuit. I'm also a member of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, who I'm representing here today. We certainly are supportive of the spirit and the impetus behind this bill. We think that anything dealing with public safety and that's going to help us locate and serve victims is important. But we have a couple of issues with the language in the bill. We'd like to certainly work with the sponsor, and I realize time is running out. I don't know whether this committee is going to be back together in the next few days, and that's probably an issue. I just learned of the bill earlier today. But I'll just real briefly just point out a couple things that in the language that concern us, and if somebody wants to amend the bill, that might be an option. I can tell you in line 17 near the end of that line, that where you're saying that the service provider shall provide call location information. You really don't want call location. If you've got somebody who's been kidnapped or carjacked and you need to try to find them, i.e. their phone, whether there's a call being made or not, that's what this gets to. This gets to locating that phone, whether or not there's a call being made. So that call is something that really doesn't need to be there. And I see it's, even though it's a short bill, it's in a couple different places through the bill. The other issue that we had is in line 21, where you say that that they can ask for this information for purposes of responding to a call for emergency service or in an emergency situation that involves the risk of death or serious physical harm. When you put language in like the first part of that before the R, for purposes of responding to a call for emergency services, they're a law enforcement officer. I used to be a law enforcement officer that will, every call they go to is a call for emergency services. So you're not zeroing in and focusing in on what the intent, I don't believe, of this bill is. And so if you want to pass something today, I would suggest taking out that responding to a call for emergency services or, and just say in an emergency situation that involves a risk of death or serious physical harm. That covers it. Otherwise, you get into and I believe that situation, that emergency situation involving that's death and serious bodily, I believe that's defined somewhere in the code. So, again, there's some language issues like that I think are going to cause us and 911 centers and law enforcement officers and these providers some issues if the bill passes with the language as it's written. So those are just some comments. We like the bill, but we'd certainly like to talk to you about the language.
Well, a couple of things. If you would tell me again why, I'm confused about why you want to take out emergency services on line 21.
Well, because again, when you say responding to a call for emergency services,
or
but that is real, so it's an or, so it's either. So it's not just in an emergency situation that involves a risk of death, serious bodily injury. It's or the call for emergency services, which can really be anything under the sun. Every law enforcement officer or victim you talk to is gonna think that their call to the police is for emergency services, and so unless you've got, that hard language in there that it's something that involves serious risk of somebody's going to be killed or seriously injured, you're opening it up to literally anything under the sun, in my opinion.
Okay.
I spoke with a couple of people. I
Yes,
suspect the same as this, and let me just ask you, because I trust your expertise in the matter.
Yes, sir.
And I understand call for emergency services taken in that context. But if I go back and read the line, a law enforcement agency or public safety answering point shall not request unless such information is for the purposes of responding to a call for emergency service. The way I understand that to be is perhaps somebody in an emergency service got a call from, my phone, and they have that I don't know if that's an EIN or whatnot that they have on it. And so the purpose to respond to my call for an emergency is the way I'm reading that. You're clearly seeing a different context of that, correct?
I see how, with all due respect, sir, I see how you're reading it.
Right, you see it differently.
I had a professor in law school, and his thing he would ask our class every day was, who decides who decides? And I would kind of throw that at this. Who is it that's deciding that this is a call for emergency services? Is it the victim who's on the phone? Is it the call taker at the 911 center? Is it the officer that gets to the scene? Is it you as a legislature? What is a call for emergency services? I know police officers that I worked with that every other call that they went on was a call for emergency services, whether somebody's life was in jeopardy or not. So I think that's the problem.
And I hear you, and I'm not just for the late hour, but help me out here, because
Yes,
again, I'm not arguing with you. I appreciate your expertise, and
Yes,
I'm asking to clarify, as Chairman Sargent, is I think what they're saying is you shouldn't use this unless you're using it for the purposes of responding to a call. That's my question. I get to your qualifier of is it
Right.
an emergency or is it not? But I think what they're saying is you shouldn't use this unless you're trying to locate them for the purpose of responding to a call for emergency services. And it still may be the same thing with you, and I understand that, because
And I
there
guess
is a qualifier of what's an emergency and what is
the
not.
base question there is, what is a call for emergency services? And that's the question that I'm asking this committee. I think, again, if you look at the language
so
after
would
the
you-
R,
so
after
would
the
you-
or.
So would
Yes,
you
sir.
then say, because I'm
Sure.
there with you, so would you then say something for the purpose of calling for, responding to a call for emergency services involving, that could involve the, risk of death or serious injury, or in the emergency situation? So, I mean-
And what I would suggest to you, and what I wrote on my bill here is, on line 20, continue line 20 as is, and then on line 21 say information is, and then I would take out from for the purposes all the way through the R. So it'd be that unless such information is in an emergency situation that involves risk of death or serious physical harm.
Okay, so then I'm gonna play devil's advocate back with you again, trying
Yes,
to be
sir.
constructive here. How do I in a 911 system how do I decide who's deciding if it's risk of death or serious injury from the phone number? So I mean, that's why I think we have the R. I don't want to belabor the point, right?
Yes, sir.
But you raise great points. I'm just on the other side. Yeah.
And my question or my answer to that is that's exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
It's a whole lot easier to say, all right, this is a kidnapping, this is a child abduction, this is a carjacking. That is a call that involves a risk of serious physical body injury or death potentially. Otherwise, you have a call taker or a 911 operator or somebody is going to be making that decision. Is this a call for emergency services? Which again doesn't have that extra qualifier of somebody's life is at risk here. And to have that broader language in there, you're basically leaving this subject to being used for all kinds of things that may or may not be truly a life or death emergency, but somebody somewhere decides that this is a call for emergency services. Our victim's upset on the phone. They think it's an emergency, so we're going to ping this phone and find out where this phone's located. And I think there's an issue there.
So the last question, if I can ask, I know our learned attorney has joined us. Sean Marie, does the on line 22 of the bill, the words that involve the risk of death or serious physical harm, do those words go with an emergency situation and also go with responding to a call for emergency services, since there's an or in there? Either. I know you're an attorney as well. Do you see what I'm saying? If those qualifying words go with both, I have more. I think you would have. You may still not agree with the wording, but it would make more sense to you, would it not? If serious death, risk of death, or serious physical harm went with the call for emergency services and the emergency situation.
And I see what you're saying there, and I would agree with you. But if it applies to both, then you really don't need both, because one's an emergency situation, one's emergency services.
Okay.
And they're the same.
Are we asking our counsel on this?
So I would say that if y'all are having this debate, that it's not clear, and if you want to make it clear, then I can help you do that. The way I just read it on the clock, so to speak, that I see it as emergency services or in an emergency situation that involves a risk of death or serious physical harm. But if y'all are having this debate, then I would say that the average person would probably have that same question, and we can change it to make it clear, depending on the will of the chairman of the committee.
Well, somebody wants to, if you can work with, okay, we have another attorney on the,
Fleet of attorneys.
if y'all can come up with some language, I want to make sure that, thank you, I appreciate it.
The final comment I had is, and somebody spoke earlier to this, but the other question we had is if this gets abused, we've got laws on the books that deal with computer things and GCIC. If somebody uses that for personal use, runs somebody's history, runs somebody's tag, there are criminal penalties for that. And I'm not sure that those laws would apply to this. And if not, then what is the penalty if a 911 dispatcher at 3 in the morning decides to ping her ex-husband's phone and find out where he's at.
Yeah.
And that also is an issue that this committee, I think, should at least address.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I want to ask, I want to make sure that if the telecommunication industry has anything to offer on this, you have the opportunity to. Apparently not. Okay. Got a couple questions. Looks like we have Chairman Fleming over here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the appropriate time, I have a motion. If you allow me to make a motion, I'll make an amendment to clear up what we were just talking about.
Okay. Not quite the proper time yet. I want to make sure I get got a couple other questions. Looks like Representative Moore.
Yeah, thank you. So the gentleman brought up the exact lines that had concerned me as well. You know, from a drafting perspective, it was unclear where the clauses end and the next one begins. So I would echo those sentiments about, you know, clarifying the drafting of this. Until an amendment is made and the language is clarified, I would not be able to support the bill as is due to its vagueness, but I'm curious to know what kind of amendments we can agree on. Thank you.
Well, any member of the committee is, can offer an amendment. I have, looks like, is there another? Representative Jackson, which one are you? Number 3?
3.
Okay. I just turned, okay, you're back on. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may ask the presenter a couple questions, could it assist us on line 17 and 21 to add 911 in front of the call? And the reason why, because when I think about the Kelsey Smith Act, is really trying to help to use current technology to locate individuals, and this phone is a transceiver, so I don't have to make a call. It will ping towers, right? I mean, Siri's listening to me right now. So I was just wondering based on your expertise, should we add 911 call in front of call and then add some language in there where GBI or law enforcement don't have to be tied to a specific call? If they have, and I don't want to get into the missing person category, but if Jane Doe or John Doe is considered to be in grave danger and GBI can tap into their phone number from a passive standpoint, the call wasn't made, but they can ping towers. So I was just wondering, shouldn't we add language in there to help strengthen this particular measure?
Representative Jackson, I remind you that we would ask a presenter what they would recommend.
Right, that's what I was just recommending.
I mean, they can't tell us. We don't ask them what to add. We would ask them what they would recommend. So if you would,
You're asking me,
right.
Representative, I'm no technology expert, but I know if a call is either made or received from a cell phone, they can tell you which towers it's hitting off of when that's occurring. I think what this bill is getting at, and the technology here is, somebody's missing, somebody's been abducted, his life is in danger, and you need to find that person. So my understanding of the technology is if the phone is on, even if no activity's taking place on the phone, text calls, in, out, whatever, as long as it is on, cell phone companies have the ability to find it and locate it. So I think the easiest thing to do is in line 17 there at the end, and of course you'd have to do it a couple other places in the bill where it's mentioned. I think on the second page it's also mentioned on line 31. I think the easiest thing would be to just take out call location and just say location. They are to provide location information for that phone.
okay, thank you. I see 2 of the attorneys on the committee are over here huddling, and I think maybe there's possibly a motion for what we're going to do is take this. We're going to take this LC 28926-8ER, and we're going to perfect that and then have a committee sub put together from that, and that's what we'll work from.
Mr. Chairman, if you would allow me, I would first make a motion to pass by committee substitute, and then I'll make amendments after that.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion a second. Any discussion on that? We do have discussion on it.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, the district attorney, I think, his advice is wise. There are 4 areas in the bill where the word call is in front of location. I first would move to strike the word call as it appears in front of the word location on 4 lines, line 17, line 24, line 26, and line 31. That would be my first amendment.
Okay. All right, we have a motion for an amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of that amendment, indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. Amendment passes.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, my second amendment would be on line 21.
Go ahead and
To
make it in the form of a motion.
To strike, I would move that we strike all the words in between the word for.
And what line you on?
21.
Okay.
Strike all the words between the words for and the words in, so that it would read code section unless such information is an emergency situation, so forth and so on.
We have a motion. Is there a second? All in favor of the motion, indicate by saying aye. Any opposed by saying no. The motion passes in this amendment. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, there's one other place where you strike the word call. That would be on line 3.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead with that. Unless there's objection, we will include that in the motion that just passed.
Line 3.
Unless there's objection, we will include that in that part of the motion that just passed. All right, with that, we have a motion on the bill, and it has been amended, and this will be a substitute, a committee substitute. So, all in favor of the committee substitute to House Bill 541, indicate by saying aye. Any opposed by saying no. House Bill 541 by committee substitute passes and now can be taken to the Rules Committee. And with that, we have no more business, do we?
Just Representative Scoggins.
We're not taking that up. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.